Hey everyone, this is Josh with part 2 of our discussion of The Pale Blue Eye. I am Nevermore. That was another Raven. I should have thought of something else. Thump Thump.
No.
What other? I'm trying to draw my Poe references. And I'm joined by...
And I'm Femi, and I am really looking forward to a Cask of Amontillado.
Oh, there we go. That's a good one. That's a psycho one, too.
Yeah.
We are in part 2 of our smart outline discussing the film, The Pale Blue Eye, and the A and the R stand for audience and rethink. So when we talk about audience, one of the things we want to communicate is who we think is potentially a good group to engage this film on a deeper level. This isn't a be-all, end-all, or, a collection of how many F-bombs were in the film, and therefore what makes it good or bad, but more just thinking about based on the content or how you would like to bring this movie to other people to dig deeper into it. Who's the best audience? So usually we break this into 3 groups: family with kids, friends, or evangelistically, to just get conversations going. So from your perspective, Femi, who should watch this film in which kinds of groups?
Let's just say not kids. If you are a child, you should not watch The Pale Blue Eye. There's not a lot of language or nudity, but there's a lot of other stuff that is not the best to get a good night's sleep. Yeah, it is a murder mystery, and you see some bodies and other stuff, and then it has witchcraft in it, which a lot of people just don't need to expose kids to as well. So, how about you?
Yeah, I would say families with kids, also a no, but I do think, and we've talked about this before, that sometimes I think we can be overprotective of kids when they do get older. And so I could see this being actually, like you said, because there's not a lot of language, there's not a lot of nudity, but there is some kind of darker themed stuff. This could be a great movie as a family with older kids to kind of like bring them into engaging some of that more intense imagery to then have a deeper discussion about it. But yeah, like, don't show this to your 5-year-old.
No, not at all.
Same thing with friends and evangelistically. I think, Christian Bale does a great job. It's an interesting movie. It's not crazy long. There is some really good stuff to talk about to our part 1 when we mentioned love, justice, friendship, vengeance. But I do think each person has kind of their own trigger points. Yes. And I think with this movie, there's definitely some hot button stuff in there that someone who's maybe really sensitive to topics like, sexual assault, rape, suicide, just even the grossness of some of the imagery, like you said, like the whole witchcraft scene in the basement is pretty intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of how we would frame it for the audience. So with that, we'll just start diving right into asking some of our discussion questions. So one of the things, and I'm going to pivot a little bit from and jump down the list, but something that you mentioned, Femi, at the end of your question list was there being a Jesus moment. And I was kind of like filling in notes as I was watching it, and I saw that and I was like, oh, I don't feel like I've seen it yet. And I knew exactly the moment when it showed up. So talk us through, what do you think was the Jesus moment in The Pale Blue Eye, and why do you think that is a significant thing for us to engage with?
Spoiler alert.
Yes. Heavy spoilers going forward.
But the person who is guilty gets the evidence that could convict them burned. And it right in front of him let go. So and it's just a grace upon grace, because the main character is so heart-stricken and grief-stricken and crestfallen and angry, and that the person who has the convicting evidence just has forgiveness for him. It's like, I know that you did something gruesome and horrible. You have to live with that. But I will forgive you by not making you suffer beyond what you have suffered. It's like taking your kid out for ice cream after they do something wrong. Like, just grace upon grace of, they know they did something wrong. They know they don't deserve it. But I think that was something that Jesus does for us. We know what we do badly. And if we think about it, we can go, oh man, I'm much worse than I think. And so I think that was the thing in my mind that was like, oh, yeah, I am forgiven. I am allowed to continue living when I don't deserve it.
Yeah. Something to add into the imagery of that scene. So immediately I was kind of thinking of the story, the visual storytelling of the movie. And so when we're in the scene where Poe is about to have his heart taken out by the siblings, there's a fire that starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's burning and it's bright, and the fire is the thing that ends up killing both of the siblings by, crushing them and bringing parts of the old house down. And I thought it was interesting then that not too much later after that, we have this symbol of Landoor. And I think this is an important detail. He literally has the slips of paper that could convict him in his hand. And in that whole scene, he doesn't attack Poe. He doesn't threaten, like, if you squeal, I'm coming for you. There's none of that. He willingly gives Poe the papers because he knows that Poe has a choice to make, which is, do I keep this and go to the grave with it, or do I, get this guy arrested and tried? And so he gives it to him. And the moment when Poe, like, takes it and he's kind of like not sure, but then what does he do? He burns it. And so I thought that was really interesting that we have these two images in the film side by side or in close proximity with the siblings getting burned for their sins, but then also we have the evidence of Landoor's sins, and that's burned instead of him.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you said Jesus moment, I was like, oh yeah, dude, that's great. That's so good. So I want to sit in this a little bit because, we talked in part 1 about one of the messages we thought was really important with this movie was vengeance, justice, love. I could see someone seeing this movie, and if we mention and point to that as a Jesus moment, it might feel confusing because Landoor killed 2 people very grisly, had created this whole ruse to set up these siblings who are now dead to take the fall. And now he is kind of acquitted and will never be tried for what he's done to the fullest extent of the law. What might our human hearts be bothered about with that? And what is the importance of seeing that as a symbol of grace? And like you said, taking out for ice cream when you've done something wrong.
Yeah. Let me think about that. I think that I understand the question. It's hard when people who are guilty get let go. One of the and sorry, I don't want to offend anybody if you're Catholic. One of the things that Catholics have is an issue with Protestants and the fact that it's by grace and faith alone that we are saved is that it's like Protestants aren't big enough about what you have to do. You have to, like, live righteously. And if you got forgiven by a judge, but you didn't live righteously, that's not okay. Who takes on the payment of, like, living righteously? Which is misunderstood because Jesus took on the payment of living righteously. But the idea of shouldn't something happen to somebody who's guilty is hard for us to wrestle with until we realize we are guilty and God lets us live. He doesn't make everything easy all the time, but he allows us to continue to live, to make decisions, to work through things. And I think that it's hard to have grace for somebody who does something so gruesome, especially like even in prison, certain types of crimes are viewed as worse than others and prisoners attack each other for them. So I think that that's something we have to theologically wrap our head around of. If we believe that all sin is worthy of death, then I am just as guilty. So for me to judge that Landoor killed 2 people and is going to, quote unquote, get away with it, it's to misbalance the fact that he lost a wife that he loved, he lost a daughter that he loved, she was attacked, and that my sin also has those stories too of, well, I wouldn't have said that if this person didn't say this, and I'm hurt by that, and I'm anxious about this. It's like we're the same. We're not as different as we think just because something looks more gruesome. We both rejected God as the source of our justice. So
yeah. So staying on that, you had us questioning, is revenge okay? And your answer in our notes is no, obviously. So with that, and you kind of, I think we're alluding to it just now, what should our view of Landoor be then once we get to the end of the movie and we see the truth behind this whole story?
Yeah, the initial thought I had is like, I'm supposed to be forgiving of him for knowing what he's been through. I'm supposed to forgive him and go, you should probably still be honest. You should probably still confess. You don't have to. I'm not going to confess for you, but it's really important that someone who has been shown grace still has to wrestle with the fact that, like, I know what I did and I know what it was wrong. And that takes time sometimes, but that I am also him. There was a Middle Eastern guy whose family had been killed by like a terrorist, and they were in court. This is a story, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but the defendant came down, and the person whose family had been killed looked at him and just started crying. And he's like, man, I could be just like him. And if something happened like this to me, I could be just like Landoor. So some sympathy, some compassion, but also a holding to God's sense of like the truth and the honesty, and realizing like, hey, I need some help. How about you?
Yeah, I think you're hitting at something that is interesting, because when I've just been, kind of ingrained in conversations around like the faith and perceptions of Christians recently. And something I've noticed is I think people have this perception that because we believe in this idea of grace and God covering us in our sins and we don't deserve it, that like we're better than other people, or like we don't have to change. And so then you have these people who, say that like, I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus, I believe in his saving grace, but also I still am really rude, I'm still really crass, I'm still really doing all these things. And I think something that you're hitting at is this idea of, if we really are saved by grace, like, are we still, how do I frame this? What am I wrestling with right now? I think what I'm thinking through is this idea of, even though I'm forgiven and I'm saved by grace, is there a point where not taking ownership and not accepting the consequence of that action in the different settings? Because on a spiritual level, we're forgiven, but we're not forgiven in a sense that, like, I think that's what I'm getting at. That there's a perception that when we say of someone who does something really heinous, oh, well, God forgives them, I forgive them. And people interpret that to then mean, oh, so like they shouldn't have to go to jail, they shouldn't have to pay their dues to society, whatever. And I think I would say, no, I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there is still a level where wrong done is wrong done, and there are rippling effects, and we don't just absolve punishment. But on a certain extent, what are we going to do in modeling Christ's level of love and grace to us that still kind of holds the line between like forgiveness and seeking restoration, but also not just saying like, I know you killed like 10 people, but like, God forgives you, so get out there, champ.
And it should be on that person's conscience of like, I know what I did. I think that's something Paul alludes to in his letters, is just saying that, should we go on sinning that grace may abound? Because if I acknowledge my sin, then I acknowledge another element of grace. If I don't acknowledge my sin and what I actually deserve for that sin, then I'm not acknowledging the grace that I've been shown for that sin as well either.
Mm-hmm.
I have to apologize to my kids and to my family and to like friends and even acquaintances. I have to apologize because it allows me to realize again what grace God has shown me, that there is nothing else that is happening, but I need to acknowledge that he has shown me grace. He has shown me grace. And in this film, there's not that element of wrestling with it of how does Landoor like re-engage Marcus and make sure that he goes, hey, I blamed your son and your daughter for these things that I did because of what happened to my daughter. And outside of the fact that it was an accident, like I know that name hurts. And so can I do something to help clear their name? Can I do something like that should be on my conscience, not mandated by a judge. And that's hard. That's hard to do that. So
for sure. Yeah. So what type of punishment then fits the crime? I think that's an interesting question, especially in the States when we have a lot of, disagreements on like capital punishment and stuff like that. Like what is, especially in a fallen
which is
world,
also gruesome, by the way.
Yeah. That's like a whole can of worms.
Yep.
But bringing it up because I think, it's always interesting to me, like when we have conversations about God or the world and people are kind of prickly to this idea of God existing and like what he expects of us or that he expects anything of us, is that in most of my experiences, if you press them on ideas of justice or what should we do when someone has done something wrong or someone is actively contributing bad, chaotic things to the people around them, to their city, state, world, whatever, they are very quick to be listing the laundry list of like stringing up by his toes and like, give him 40 like, and it's not a hard press to get people to buy into the idea that like someone deserves something. But if we have these fallen hearts and minds and we're judging other people, but we also as Christians have to hold this doctrine of grace and forgiveness and restoration, like what do we do with punishment? And what do we do with this idea of someone needing to pay?
I am completely going to sidestep the answer to the question.
Because I'm just throwing it in the ether, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah.
Because like, when Landoor says, I hope that I don't have the energy or to chase Stoddard.
The last guy.
He's just like, I just hope that he's always nervous the rest of his life. Like that's a type of punishment. But it's how do you accurately punish somebody if they cause fear and physical desecration of another person? Do they have to understand what it is cognitively? Do they have to undergo it so they know what it is? An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. And to follow up, I'm also kind of going to sidestep as well.
Yeah.
And more lean into, I think my heart behind pressing into that is to have us wrestling with the simplicity with which we want to render out punishments and justice. Like I think there's, especially in our reactionary culture right now, I think it's really easy for someone to do X and to be like, Y is what's deserved. I think like, what is it? A silly example, so we don't get into, some of the heavier things that have happened, was the Phillies lady. Did you hear about that?
No.
Okay, so story goes, there's this woman and a family. They're sitting in separate sections in, the backfield at a baseball game. Home run gets hit. There's a dad, the ball is live, or everyone sees it coming over, right? So the ball's live, it's bouncing around, and there's a woman who's going for it, and there's a dad who's going for it. Ball kind of bounces down, dad grabs it. Yay, I got it, gives it to his son. We end up finding later in the story that it's the son's birthday. This woman on the new, you can Google it, the Phillies lady, just beelines for where that dad is chewing him out, yelling at him. Basically, what's happening is her saying, that's not supposed to be yours. It should be mine. You need to give it to me. And he's just like flabbergasted in the video. So at some point, as in their exchange, he just grabs the ball from his son and gives it back to her, and is like literally, its hands are like, and it was fascinating to me seeing the interaction and the level of punishment that people thought that action deserved. Like if you dig through the comment sections on YouTube, Instagram, whatever, people were like, drag her, ruin her life. Who is this lady? Like people were after her. Do I think that was a good thing to do? Absolutely not. Let it go. It's a freaking baseball. Buy one in the gift shop. Like it's fine. But I think it was shocking to me how extreme people got about an action like that and what they thought deserved, what was a righteous punishment.
I will say this, we've talked about this with Arrival, but when people who are really, really firm on punishment are usually sometimes the most scared people of not quelling the evil that is within. So if we let somebody who has hurt a child go free after 7 years and they don't learn their lesson, we could have this. So some people are like, no, if you do something to a child, death penalty. And like that seems so harsh, but I understand that perspective of I don't want you anywhere near anybody else ever again. The truth of the matter is we all realize that we all changed. Most adults don't wet the bed anymore. And so the people change and can change, but it's hard when they perpetuate something so asinine that we're just like, you should not be allowed in a baseball game, like the rest of your life. It's like, well, is that really fair? Like, or should she be under an adequate amount of shame for a certain amount of time? Like, it's really hard, but I understand the perspective of like harsh punishments because you don't want bad things to happen again.
Yeah.
But when it happens to, if you do something, if you're driving and you speed and you hit a puddle and you accidentally do something, you want a lot of grace. So like, just, it's hard. It's hard to figure out what the accurate punishment is, which is partially like why the wages of all sin is death. Like, it's full separation from God. But the gift, right, of Christ in Jesus Christ, the gift of eternal life in Jesus Christ our Lord, is so amazing. Undeserved. What mercy, what grace.
Yeah. I feel like that was a good, even though we sidestepped, I feel like we sidestepped into a good spot. So that works. So to that, one of the scenes that stuck out to me that was really interesting, it's a really brief moment, and I'm going to kind of pause and explain that where this process comes from for us of like digging into movies is sometimes when we're engaging a story, a song, a movie, a book, a video game, anything narrative, it can be good, and it is good to see the whole thing in context, but sometimes it can be just that little back and forth between two people, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, there's a lot there. And so to me, one of those scenes was when Landoor's talking to, I forget what his name is, but he's one of the main guys at the military school, and they're having at it. It's coming out that Landoor has a huge issue with the military school, and this leader in the military school says, you would, by your logic, because Landoor's kind of going at him, by your logic, you would be saying that a crime committed by a Christian is a stain on Christ. And then Landoor's kind of like, kind of gives like a, I mean, you said it, not me kind of reaction. So we don't see in this movie, because of Landoor, not having his daughter around, not having his wife anymore, he's kind of isolated, the consequence of this action. But you also did allude to Marquise and his family, and that now, because of what has transpired, there's a narrative that's going to be passed on about who they were and like the stain on their family. So when you think of us as Christians and kind of that logic that like a crime by a Christian is a stain on Christ, like what does that mean to you, and how do you see that as a challenge for us to think about how we show up in the world with our witness?
Such a good question. I think the way that it convicts me is how was Jesus seen at the time, and how do I want to be seen, and where is the conflict? So I wanted to be seen as intellectual, as funny or witty at the very least, intelligent, good thinker when it comes to faith, because I grew up in a very rational household. Like all of our belief we had apologetic definitions and agreements and arguments for a lot of the things that we believe. So it was not like a fool's religion. It wasn't just like I feel good one day, like love Jesus. And I realized that Jesus had the reputation amongst religious leaders, and this is for approval from like, my youth group when I was a kid, my college ministry, even my young adult life at my church. I wanted to be seen this way, as like intelligent and witty. I realized that Jesus was seen as somebody who kids were attracted to. Jesus was seen as somebody who was like a drunkard and a slob. There's probably levels to that, but because he like had fun with people, and nobody like, shout out John Piper, shout out Tim Keller, shout out like David Platt. I don't think any of them are partiers. You know, they're all wise, they're all witty, they're all intelligent. They have their own flaws that they admit to. But I don't see people who like know them as like a fun person, And I think that if we continue to do that, the stain on Christ is he is cold. He is direct, and he is firm, but for him to be firm and still have this reputation means something. The creators of The Chosen talked about this when they cast Jonathan Rumi, and they're like, he could be so firm and he wasn't like weak, but he was so gentle. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to like reframe that Jesus wasn't like a great debater. He was smart, but he wasn't just trying to like, ooh, gotcha, like some people do today. And so that's the thing. I think we should be careful of that being the stain. We have the right arguments. That's great. We're smart. We're rational. That's great. But do people see us as a people of joy and as of love and as of care? And like, what is otherwise? Is that a stain on the legacy of Christ and what he was willing to go through for us?
Yeah.
But that's my sort of long-winded answer.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think about maybe more than I should. But I think that's constantly at my forefront of thought. And I think to me, why it's so really important for us as believers to wrestle with that question of what does our witness do to Christ and the image of Christ isn't because we need to like, I think someone could wrongly interpret what you're saying and say like, oh, so we need to like go to bars and stuff now. And like, we need to watch R-rated movies to be cool, you know? And I think there's this like weird, I've literally heard Christian commentators like frame it that way. And to me, it's like, no. It's not about fitting in or like being cool or having this image that other people feel like, oh, we're culturally relevant. It's about having a level of authenticity that I think other humans crave when they want deep relationship with people. And if they can sense like, oh, you're just out to like make me feel bad and destroy what I think and like whatever, there's going to be a barrier that exists between those two people. But if I can, you know, sit at a coffee shop with a friend and, you know, joke about certain things in a healthy and loving way, or if, you know, I'm even at a bar with another friend who's not a believer, who isn't going to come to church with me, but I can sit there and he'll, you know, talk theology over a pint. Like that's not us kowtowing to the world. That's us understanding, I think, the greater mission and creating deeper relationships that connect on a heart level.
Mm-hmm. It's more human than being a human version of a book.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. Yeah. Well, dude, I've seen your face and you look like you're barely holding on. As a note, Femi's being an absolute champ right now because he is super sick. I would have canceled the crap out of this podcast if I was feeling what you was feeling. So God bless you, dude. We're going to keep it trucking. So we'll see you in part 3 of The Pale Blue Eye to talk about some theology.